Um, Hello, everyone. My name is Miss Sam. I am one of the teen librarians here at Levittown Public Library. So we are so proud and honored to have Jerrian Grant with us today. She is a healthcare IT professional with demonstrated expertise in IT operations, advanced troubleshooting, incident resolution, and managerial support. She has over 18 years of experience in supporting electronic health record or EHR and pharmacy systems. She is a certified Scrum Master and currently a Senior Application Specialist for Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. So that is a lot. So I'm going to kick it over to you, and I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. I started out, so I do have a master. I have a master's in health informatics and a bachelor from the University of Illinois at Chicago. And I also have a bachelor's in computer science from Iona College that's located in New Rochelle here, local to New York State. I started out in this field, which is the whole healthcare blend of IT and healthcare. It's one of those where I started out early, knowing what I wanted to do. And I always knew that I wanted to be in computer science, but I always wanted to mix the computer science with science. I'm one of those that are good with puzzles. I love math. I do have a minor in math as well from my undergrad. And puzzles, problem solving, I gravitate towards that at an early age, as I could go back to the 13 years old. And I am a first generation college graduate. My nationality, I actually migrated here from Jamaica. So I started out in Jamaica attending school when it was that opportunity to choose what you want to focus on in your career goal. I was like, computer science, I want to make sure I do biology, chemistry, physics. I have a passion towards that. But I also, the interesting portion is that I never saw myself as a doctor or a nurse or any direct patient care, because I knew emotionally I get over involved and I know I couldn't handle it. But I always had the dream where I want to contribute towards that field. And when I started looking at computer science, and naturally I just gravitate towards it. So I am doing what I love to do and what I see, it's my passion, and I end up in this field.
Right. I mean, that's a great point that you kind of touched on, is that, you knew personally that you wanted to be in healthcare, but that whole emotional aspect of it was not a perfect fit for you. So this was a great way to combine kind of a bunch of your passions. So that's very interesting. So let's start kind of with your education. I know that you have a bunch of degrees. So can you tell us, obviously, what was your first, when you started your undergrad? I'm sorry, did you say that you started with computer science or math? I know mathematics. Which was the beginning?
Mathematics. So I love math. It's weird because I always say if I had another dream job or something that I would do, I could see myself as a math teacher as well, because that's my favorite subject. And interestingly enough, because like writing papers and doing essays and stuff, I found that more challenging. But what I did, and I started early with that, is that because I knew that was my challenge area, I would spend more time trying to make sure I invest my time into doing the best paper. And I always got compliments like, your papers are so great. And I'm like, you have no idea what the work that it took to get it there, because I knew it was not naturally writing and doing essays. It was not natural for me. So I focus on my challenges, and that's the personality I have, and I realize it works for me.
That's great. And now, can you tell us a little bit about breaking into your career field? Because obviously, you have a bunch of different educational paths that could kind of get you to where you are. So what type of education is needed to break in? Do you need any specific certifications? Are there any degrees that are more favored upon than others? How does that work?
So one of the things the advice that I would give to anyone, the computer science, it definitely helps a lot. And I think from a female point of view, because it is, and it's changing, it's a male dominated field. And focusing on that portion, it looks challenging, but I always say, if that's your challenge and you really love it, you can actually do it. And if you fail, just pick yourself up and try again. When I started out on my undergrad, as a first generation college grad, as also an immigrant, I didn't own a computer. So there was a computer lab, thanks good for goodness for the school, they had a computer lab, and I would spend hours there. And there were times it was pretty challenging, but I focus on it because I love it, and I wanted to make sure that I was good at it. And another thing too that actually drove my passion, I didn't mention earlier that I love law as well. I'm a good debater. So, problem solving is a passion of mine. So and I look at the law portion of it as problem solving. But when I knew that I couldn't afford to go to law school. So one of the things I went to, they had these minority programs, and I went to the counselor and I said to her, I was like, I need to graduate in 4 years. And I need a degree that's going to work for me and that I could get out of school and get a job. And I knew computer science was my passion. And she says to me, she was like, well, you're on the right path. And I was like, okay, so 4 years is what I got to make sure I could get out and start working. And that's the path that I went down. But again, it's cautious because you want to go with what you love. You need to enjoy it. And I say hone in on your passion. And if you find it challenging, because I will say it was not easy doing programming and with the classes, because I went to a liberal arts school. So because I went to liberal arts, the technology wasn't the main focus for that school. So I found myself with all these extra credits when I graduated, and going towards the chemistry and the physics and all those courses. It was extra work, but that's what I really wanted. And because I knew that's what I wanted, I end up putting in the work that's needed. So I say focus on the need, and for all the, because I said it's a male dominated field, and I encourage female, especially with STEM classes. If you love your sciences, why not go for it and don't give up, keep trying, you'll make it. It's really good and interesting. And I love technology.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually, you actually brought up a really good point too, because I try to remind teens that when they're looking for what college that they want to apply to really make sure that they offer programs that are, in line with what your career choice or what you're interested in too. So sometimes, kind of like you said, the liberal arts school, might not have had a lot of those programs that you were really interested in, and so, or the programs designed specifically for that. So that's always something that I remind them to kind of look into too. So that's a great point.
Yeah, and I wish someone had told me that, but I didn't have that structure when I went to college. I knew I wanted to go, but I didn't have anyone to help guide me outside of the school. And that's interesting, but it actually worked in my favor. Because if I mentioned that writing and the whole grammar stuff and all was not my first, it doesn't come natural for me, but that liberal arts actually helped me a lot. So it's something, it's funny how you don't choose your path, but you gravitate towards it, and it actually worked out to be the best thing I could do, because then even though I'm in the computer field, technology field, you still need to write a proper email, you need to communicate with people, and you need to write. I realized that liberal arts degree, going to that school that focus on that, the psychology, all those writing, communication class, it actually was, it worked out for me. So yeah, I wouldn't change it for a thing.
Yeah, that's great. So I know you said when you were looking for what degree you wanted to pursue, you said I got 4 years and I want to get a job. Yes. So are there, with your particular field, is there any, do you just need the 4-year degree? Can you do it with a 2-year associate's degree? Do you need a master's degree eventually to advance within the field? How does that work? Are there any specific certifications that you need like that?
So one of the unique things that I noticed with technology, I would say a 2-year degree actually works. But if you look at it as a big picture, there's a lot of pressure that puts onto a 4-year degree. So I would recommend a 4-year degree is over a 2 years, just to get your feet in the door. And because the competition is there, you want to make sure that you're in line with your competitors. Because from my experience with the hiring world, if you're going to go up against someone with a 2-year degree, more than likely, and you have the similar experience, more than likely they're going to go with a 4 years degree. So that's my advice, to get the 4 years. The certifications are, it's an added bonus. It works. And the thing with computer science is that you can go to so many areas. There's networking. You can go into voice over IP, which is like the telephone portion of it. There's also programming, which is where I started out. And there's a gamut. There's hardware. There's so many things that you could branch out into. I'm here at healthcare and a hospital, and I always say to people too, like, hospitals are just like any other business. They need an accountant. They need someone that you can think of all the professions they're needed. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But yes, in that field, I will recommend a 4-year degree.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point that you brought up too. With IT, if you have a degree in that, there really is a limitless kind of areas of expertise that you can kind of go into. It's one of those degrees that really have so many different areas and so many different opportunities as far as what you're actually doing for your career.
Exactly. So I recommend.
Yeah. So one other thing that you mentioned too is, that you recommend going for a 4-year degree too. Would you say, obviously technology is constantly changing, and we've especially noticed that in the last couple of years with Zoom and telehealth and things like that have kind of sprouted up. How do you stay on top of that? Are you required to do CEUs, like continuing education, throughout your time, or is it just something that you, kind of do on your own? How does that work within your field?
So there's two things. What I did, I went and I obtained like 3 certifications. It was nothing major. There's a lot more that I can obtain, and I'm actually looking into others. But through those certifications, I do obtain CUs, and also it's good to be a part of organizations like there's HIMSS, there's a HEMA that gear towards healthcare IT, and they do a lot of publications. I read a lot in my spare time, so I try to keep up the trends of what's going on in the industry. There's a lot of regulatory regulations that does occur between the state and at the federal level. So I with keeping up with the news and the latest and all the requirements, and also for my job, that keeps me up to date with technology. And there's a lot of things out there, but that's the downside to computer science. It's easy to fall behind if you're not trying to keep up with the trends, because as you look, there's new technology available. So it's important.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's kind of go into a little bit of your everyday. So can you kind of lead us through kind of what is a typical day look like for you? Obviously, there's many different areas that IT, I feel like, is associated with. So what are you doing on a daily basis?
So my daily basis, my main focus now is EHR. So I say my daily, my bread and butter, as you want to put it, is not to be too cliche, is working with the providers, and we have the EHR. So their interfaces, like we're monitoring the interface. I do 24/7 support. We're on an on-call rotation. So, and when I say the interfaces, I work a lot with HL7 interfaces. And with these interfaces, it would be like lab results. I'm at the server level. So if there's an issue where it's generally all patients, like they're not getting lab results for, as an example, the lab results are not coming back for all the patients at the hospital. They'll reach out to me and say, hey, we're not getting lab results. My job is to go in and check to see what could be the reason why. It could be a bad transaction that came over that actually stopped the interface from going. I'd have to resolve it, figure it out. It's a lot of problem solving. And we do printing, so I have to do hardware. If there's an issue where I'm told that they can't print like patient instructions, or as an example, or a handoff report, which is basically the next care team that needs to take care of the patient, they need to get those reports. they reach out to me and say it's not working for everyone, I will go in to look to see what could possibly causing the printing not to work. I do collaborate with a lot of other teams across the board. And with those teams, we have different resources for different systems. And we're reaching out to them to say, hey, trying to identify where the break point is, because there's a lot of point of failures. And once I could identify that, I'll reach out to the respective owners for those systems and ask them to work with me and we get it solved. And again, because it's healthcare, everything is timely. So, you're affecting someone's life. You want to get it up and running as soon as possible.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And you actually brought up another question that I had, which, when we're talking to teens about what jobs they're deciding on, we talk about whether the work is more individually based or whether it's more team based. And it sounds like your job is definitely more team based.
Yes.
Is that something that you would agree with? I mean, obviously you're working with many different departments, and how important is teamwork within your position?
It's critical. It's critical that we work as a team. As I mentioned with the computer science, I'm working from a technology point of view, but at the end, we need to make sure that end users are satisfied. Our end users are doctors and all the care providers for patients. Their job is to make sure the patients are taken care of. So we need to work together to understand that what their needs are met so that they can provide the care that the patient needs. So there's definitely a collaboration effort. I do a lot of projects outside of the daily bread where I do, support of the system. There are new technology that's on the forefront. One of the technology I'm working with now is AI, artificial intelligence, and predictive data that will help with predictive medicine. So there's a lot of cloud-based and as well as natural language understanding and processing. So I'm working to get that data out. And when that data goes out, it goes through a process where it can provide an understanding to do data analytics on that data and figure out how to better predict and provide better individualized care for patients. And as I mentioned, Memorial Kettering Cancer Center our focus is cancer. So whatever we can do to help, and that research is so important. So all that data is geared towards research and better predictive medicine.
That's amazing. I mean, that just sounds incredibly interesting. So
It is.
that's very, very cool. Yeah. And I know, I think you said that you're kind of like on an on-call rotation or something like that. So how do your hours work? Do you have like typical hours that you work? Does it change often? Are there times that you're busier rather than others? How does that work?
So our immediate team that does the rotation is 7 of us. So I'm on call once a week, for an entire week. It's actually 2 weeks because we have a primary and a backup, a secondary resource. I actually came off on call 2 weeks ago, and that you're working your regular 9 to 5, but it's not really a 9 to 5. It's really 24/7 at that point. Because if there is an issue, you're being paged. Once you're paged, they expect a response. The response within as soon as possible. Because as I mentioned, it's patient care, and whatever it is that's impacting the institution, it's always the plan is to get it up and running as soon as possible. There are other issues that may occur that doesn't need that immediate action, but if it's something to do with lab results or that's critical, we need to get it up and running and figure out what's going on or determine if we go to like some type of downtime procedure. We do have contingency plans in place, but it's always to get them working as efficiently as possible.
Yeah. And that actually brings up a great question that I had too, was about limitations. Obviously, there are times when you're on call. So do you find that there are any limitations to your personal or social life that teens should be aware of if this is a career, the field that especially within healthcare, that they're considering going into?
So that's the key where it goes to team and collaboration. We work together. I'm actually a part of a team that's an excellent team right now. If there are plans that say I have some social event and I know I'm on call, I can always reach out and ask someone to switch with me and provide coverage. Because we also have the primary and a secondary. If I'm unavailable, someone else, the secondary, will pick up the call, or vice versa. Can always reach out to someone else on the team and say, hey, can you cover me? So that's where the teamwork is so critical.
That's great. And then do you find that there are certain times of the year that are busier than others, or because it's healthcare, is it pretty much a steady workflow throughout the year?
I would say, the interesting part about it is I notice the holidays around this time of year gets pretty busy. But hmm, is there a slow? I would say not necessarily. It depends on, new projects come along, and if there's something going on with the project, we're always hoping that everything goes for the best. But as long as, we have upgrades, we do have to upgrade our system to technology changes, and there are new regulatory requirements from both the state and the federal level. So we do have to upgrade our systems according to those new regulations. And also for break fixes, our things are not always perfect for the end users. So when we get these new fixes, we have to put it out. And depending on how that works, in terms of how the deployment goes, we may have a time where we're like, oh, we're just going easy, but it's not too often. Not at all.
Yeah, I could see that. And then do you how much travel is involved within your position? Are you working at just the Memorial Sloan Kettering, the one office? Do you move without the hospital system? How does that work?
Just the current role I'm in now, there's not a lot of movement. I used to do a lot more traveling in the past in different capacity, but for this role that I'm working in now. And there are times when previously, like we attend vendor conferences. I've been to like the National Institute of Health, and it's more for collaboration, networking with other hospitals and find out what's on the forefront and what we can do, how we collaborate to make things better. So that's mainly any type of traveling that I'll be doing now or in the future, it will be geared towards that type of industry changes and working with other partners.
Gotcha. And now with this particular health field, do you feel that there are any limitations about where you can work? Is it something that really is available, this career, throughout the country, in different countries? Are there some areas that are easier to find a job in than others?
There's a huge demand actually for this field. There is, because having that healthcare experience and IT together, there's a huge demand. There's always that need. There's a lot of job offers out there, and I've been on a team where we work with different resources in Australia, the UK, South Africa, and we're in different time zones where we make it work. So I encourage people. This is a field that is highly in demand, and we don't have enough. Actually, there is a need.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. And that actually leads into my next set of questions, is kind of focusing on the teens that may be interested in this career field. Do you think that there are any particular interests, abilities, or skills that would definitely serve someone who is working in this field compared to some others? Anything that, you would definitely recommend teens, have an interest in order to be successful?
So in terms of the skill set, I would say starting out with a computer science degree, there's a gamut of what you can gravitate towards. But in terms of if we should focus on more personal, I would say communication is highly important. Effective communication is highly important because you're working and you need to collaborate. And effective listening is so important, to listen to your stakeholders and understand their needs and ask questions. I always say it's never a dumb question. And you want to make sure you get a clear understanding of what the expectations are and what they're trying, because we do go into the design phase of how we implement and make sure things are working according to their needs. And we want to make sure that we're delivering according to what they ask for. And it's nice if you can determine what's necessary when you look at a new request, to say what's needed and what nice to have. And because we know that it's not always that perfect scenario, but you need to break out the important pieces and make sure they're getting what they actually need to get their job done. And then the nice to have features, you can give it to them later on. But communication is highly important, and that team spirit.
Gotcha. And that leads into my next question, which is one of my personal favorites. I cannot tell you how many teens, as a stepmom to two amazing teens, I always get, I would never use this again in my life, referring to their high school, education. So my question to you is, how often do you use math and language within your current career field? Are there certain subjects that you find that you use more so than others?
Actually, I think personally for me, I see where the whole English, the language, because you need to write those emails. You're communicating with people from, as I mentioned, UK, all over, and you want to make sure you get your point across. So as much as you may say, oh, this is useless, it actually is not. You're going to need it. And the grammar and making sure it's definitely important. And the math, it comes in handy, comes in very handy.
And I love what you said too with the emails, because I try to remind, especially teens, that sometimes that misplaced period can completely change the whole intent of an email. And so it's very important to kind of make sure that you are, like you said, getting your point across clearly.
Correct. So I know we don't see it, and I used to be one of those teens, but I've actually owned it now. And I'm like, now I see what my parents are trying to tell me. So I said, listen to your parents. You are going to need it. Work with your grammar teacher, professor. Make sure you understand and get those punctuations in, because it does change. I say English language is so complicated. And you take things out of context, it means something completely different. So that you need to stay within context, all of that information, and get your point across. So yes, it's all needed.
Then my next question is, if there is a teen that is particularly interested in this field, is there anything that you could suggest that they could be doing in high school right now, either whether it's a part-time internship or a summer job, a volunteer opportunity, anything that you could suggest that they could, look out for as maybe some opportunities to see if this is really a field for them?
Yes, actually, there is. And in terms of internship, volunteer. I know, like at Memorial Sloan, there's this program called HOP. It's HOPP, and it starts at the high school level. I believe it's high school seniors or juniors are also eligible. They can start out they apply for it, and it comes up March of each year. I'm not sure how much the impact of our current pandemic changes it. And that's something I could actually reach out and forward you the link for that. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity to apply, and actually they come on site and they can work from different areas, IT as well as research. I know they also have it within on the clinical side of things. They can work and get their feet wet to say, hey, is this something that I really want to go down the path for? But I'm a big advocate to say, focus on a career that you love, because I will say this, it's very challenging. Working with people, it becomes harder. I always say, if it's just a computer, half my work is done, because you could just manipulate the computer and do whatever you want to get done. But when you put people in the mix of it, we all have different emotions, we have different requests, we communicate differently, but you need to figure a way how to bridge that gap. And where you bridge the gap is where it gets very complicated, and things can be misconstrued. But understanding that and keeping that information in the back of your head, and knowing that it's a talent that you develop over time, and getting your feet wet and understanding that you love it. Your passion is what's going to pull you back in to say, you know what, I'm doing something that I love, so I'm going to stick it out. So it's important to get an understanding, is this really what I want to do?
Yeah, that's great. And that sounds like a wonderful program. So definitely, I definitely highly recommend they check it out.
Yes.
So I guess one of my other very general questions, but what would you say is the best part of your job, and probably one of your biggest challenges that just people should be aware of if this is a career field they're interested in?
The biggest challenge is communication and working different personalities. and communicating and making sure you get your point across is the most challenging. But you figure your way out and how to navigate your way and understand. And once you accept and understand that there are different opinions and value different opinions, to know that sometimes you may not think of something, but somebody else does. And just be open to that, open-minded, and take all the advices as much as you can and look into it. Don't shut it down. It works out. What I love the most, I do love the whole process of problem solving. You give me the problem, I'll sit there and I want to figure it out. It's, when I solve a problem, it's like the best day. I'm like, oh, I finally fixed it. So that's where my passion is. So I do enjoy that. That's the most where my passion is, the challenge.
That's great. That's great. And then my very last question is just, again, a very generalized question. Do you have any advice for teens who are interested in either healthcare or computer science? Any last words of advice that you would like to give them, or just something you want them to know?
I want to say healthcare is not limited to just doctors or nurses. It's a huge field. We need everyone to work as an accountant. They use anyone from the telephone systems. They're all welcome aboard. And also, focused STEM, it's important for technology. There's a lot out there to get to understand. There's a lot of things on the forefront. Gaming. If you love gaming, gaming is using in the medicine field now to help with patient care. So just take a look at it. There's so much possibility when it comes on to healthcare that you can contribute and offer and make it better. And think of family.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. I just want to say thank you again so much for your time and this amazing information that you shared with us today. You are truly inspiring. I think you have an incredibly interesting job. So thank you so much for sharing all of your information with us. And, hopefully if any teens are interested or have any further questions, they can always email us at teens@levittownpl.org, and we would love to answer all of your questions. So thank you so much for your time today. And thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And if you need anything, you can always reach out. I'm an open book and I like to give back as much as I can.
Thank you so much.